You'll have to bear with me. I've tried to read this once. I'm dyslexic. It's very difficult, but this is important. UK counter-terror prevent scheme to downplay far-right threat and strengthen anti-Muslim scapegoating. This is, by the way, from the World Socialist website, wsws.org. This is one of the biggest loads of rubbish I've actually read in ages. It goes on a bit. You will have to bear with, but it is interesting, by the way. He says here, a row underway in Britain's ruling Conservative Party over soon-to-be published review into the Prevent Counter-Terrorism scheme. It shines a light on the government's plans to double down on the scapegoating of Muslims and speed the establishment of a state surveillance infrastructure under the cover of combating Islamic extremism. This is combined with efforts to downplay the danger of far right. Now I'm trying to read this a bit slower so it comes out right, because I've got it wrong a few times. Originally commissioned in January 2019, the review has been subject to repeat delays. The latest is an argument between Home Secretary Suella Braverman and Community Secretary Michael Gove, who will be responsible for the day-to-day administration of the scheme. Braverman is reportedly concerned that the report is so unguarded in its denunciation of extremist organisations or organisations supporting extremist narratives that the government will be hit with costly libel suits. She is insisting names are redacted. Gove wants the text released in full. This is a minor difference between the two ardent reactionaries. Braverman, who does not hesitate to demonise migrants, asylum lawyers and refugee advocacy groups, intended to smooth the implementation of the review's recommendations. Gove speaks for those who want as provocative a crusade as possible. You can see I'm starting to struggle a bit. The review was set up by the government to prepare an onslaught on democratic rights. It was authorised by William Shawcross, a fellow of the right-wing policy exchange think tank, a former director of the neo-conservative Henry Jackson Society. While director, he commented in 2012, "Europe and Islam is one of the greatest, most terrifying problems of our future. I think all European countries have vastly, very quickly growing Islamic populations." You can't argue with that. It's a fact. It's an absolute... Look at the state of London, for goodness sake, right? He said this in 2012, because you've only got to look at the demographics and the breeding of all the different types of people in the UK to see who breeds the least, who breeds the most, and what is going to be the outcome in the future. It is rocket science. It is maths. Nothing more. Well, right, he said previously, Shawcross has described Britain's humiliation at the hands of immigration free-for-all and a bullying multicultural ideology which has cosseted extremist Islamist preachers of hatred. He has referred to fascist Muslims as a vast filth column. That's his words, not mine. Remember, William Shawcross. In Europe, who wish to destroy us. All right, let's see if we can carry on without making a mess of this. A fervent supporter of illegal invasion of Iraq, his 2011 book, Justice and the Enemy, perverts the post, he perverts whatever that is, the post of World War II Nuremberg trial of Nazi leaders into a grotesque defence of the war on terror. Extraordinary rendition and the use of torture by Guantanamo Bay. So I think he was, well, let's put it this way. The left didn't like that. Amnesty International and 16 other groups boycotted the review over Shawcross' involvement, published an open letter stating that the UK government has no interest in conducting an objective and impartial review of Prevent. I think you find they do. Shawcross was appointed after the government's first choice, Lord Carlisle, was forced to step down by a legal challenge led by Rights Watch UK over his close ties with and publicly declared support for the Prevent strategy in the words of rights group Liberty. Okay, more. I hate reading, as you can tell. The Shawcross Review on Islamism and the Far Right. Carlyle and Shawcross were selected to defend and extender discredited programs broadly seen for the attack on democratic rights it is. Why do they put rights it in one word? Anyway, is, and to deal with the inconvenient fact for the government that the scheme is flagging up the growing of far-right fascist forces. Do you know what I always hate? The left call everybody a fascist, yet show the most fascist traits there ever was. According to leaked material from the review, Prevent is criticised for being too weak, with the report arguing that the scheme too often bestows a status of victimhood on all who come into contact with it. In the words of The Guardian, shown the leaked text, it says a more hardline approach should be taken towards Islamist extremists. I agree. But that really wouldn't sit very well with the do-gooders now, would it? And it would make them feel like they're being racist. But you're not, because Islam isn't a race, it's an ideology. This means widening the focus of the programme to target broader sections of the population. The Guardian writes that Shawcross is critical of Prevent having concentrated in prescribed organisations, while, in the report's extremely loose phrase, ignoring Islamist extremists. Basically, they go after the right while leaving Islam alone. Among these is a complaint of campaign driven by a number of Islamist groups to undermine and delegitimise, had to get that one right, remember, dyslexic, bear with, Prevent, including by stirring up grievances and mistrust towards the scheme. According to the Telegraph, the Shawcross report praises the current legal duty of schools and other public sectors works to report people, including children, to the Prevent scheme as one which works well, and especially in schools. It suggests extending the requirements to cover immigration officials and other staff in job centres. So we're assuming people in job centres need to be taught to by Prevent because they're obviously becoming radicalised, yeah? Or is it that people on the front line get to meet lots of different people, and then when they meet lots and lots of different people, be it white, black, and other things, you know, whether you've got other religions, ideologies, and all the rest of it, they get to form an opinion based on their experiences of these people or groups. And when you form an opinion that doesn't sit with the narrative, you then get a knock at the door from Prevent because you're guilty of wrong thing. Is that where we are? More likely. The report, which is to take an aim at Prevent's alleged double standards when dealing with the extreme right wing and Islam. Shawcross writes that Islam extremism are severely underrepresented in referrals to Prevent because officials are putting a focus on right-wing extremism above and beyond the actual threat it poses. This is attributed to an effort to try and fend off accusations that Prevent is stigmatising minority communities. That's pretty much just what I said. We don't want to go after too many of them, or they might think we're picking on them, even though we have due reason to because of what they've been doing. Just call me old-fashioned. The latest figures for the year to March 31st, 2021 show 4,915 referrals to Prevent, 1,033 of which were passed to a panel for consideration, with 688 taken on as cases, and of these cases, 46% related to extreme right-wing radicalisation. We'll get to what that is in a minute. 30% mixed, unstable or unclear ideology. Oh yeah, what's that like? Islam light or something, or what? Because if that was aimed towards the far right, it would have far right written all over it. So who is it? Or could that be far left? Maybe. And 22% Islamist radicalisation. Far right cases have been the majority of the group for each of this last 3 years. So far right have come out on top for the last 3 years. Why? Let me guess, because you've set the bar as what's far right, and literally everything that doesn't go far left is far right in your views, because you're not very well. Among those more serious known cases, now these are obviously serious cases and they have a point, right? Among these more serious known cases are these neo-Nazi former army-driven Dean Norris, sentenced to 18 years. Incidentally, all of these far-right shooters that go into schools, when they actually pull it apart, are actually left-wing. Just saying. They're just people that have been bullied and they've had enough. Anyway, sentenced to 18 years for possession of explosives and encouraging terrorist offences. And Daniel White, Liam Hall, Stacey Solomon and Samuel Whitby sentenced to a total of more than 30 years for possession of 3D printed guns and encouraging terrorism. This is where it starts to get a bit more weak. In explaining away these facts, Shawcross complained that Prevent's view on right-wing extremism is so broad in its intended mildly controversial... Let me get that right. Is so broad, it has included... mildly controversial or provocative forms of mainstream right-wing leaning commentary. Well, that would mean me. I'm right-wing leaning. And that an internal report listed a prominent conservative politician and member of the government as being amongst figures associated with far-right sympathetic audiences. Well, it was always going to be. Anybody that sticks to traditional values is, by that definition, far-right these days. Despite his intentions, this only confirms how the far-right are given, I'm sure that says succour, by the political establishment and the media. Centred on the government itself, Prevent was created with the deliberate aim of demonising Muslims while creating the apparatus for a surveillance and intimidation against the working class. Well, Prevent was definitely a strong-arm wing to create a bogeyman, to say that the far-right are a massive threat so they can crack down on it, and to legitimise further spying into innocent people's lives, and a bullying state which says that we need a lot more Big Brother. That's what it seems to me. That the idea that this is zealously overreaching against the right wing is laughable. No, it's not. Rather, the extreme lurch to the right in mainstream politics. No, there's not an extreme lurch. The Overton window went so far to the left that anybody set there as a centrist now is far right to you, and anybody who was a conservative, or maybe a bit further right than conservative, is literally the devil itself in your eyes. Mental. Anyway, rather extreme lurch to mainstream politics, and the media has brought it within the peripheral view of the scheme and forced a series of reluctant acknowledgements. Boris Johnson's leadership of the Tory party earned it the endorsement of fascist group Britain First. They're not fascist, right? And fascist activist Tommy Robinson. He's not fascist. He has people of all different colours in there. He doesn't want to take over anything, and he wants to let everybody speak. That's something that you won't grant anybody. It's unbelievable. Tory Jacob Rees-Mogg has already received a promise of protection from Britain First members. What do you mean protection? Do get a life. In the 2018, he has spoken at the annual dinner of the Traditional Britain Group. Obviously, that's a crime, isn't it? Anybody who wants to remain traditional and have traditional British values is obviously very much against your ideology. A group whose former founder, Lord Southerly, praised Adolf Hitler at a meeting at a Tory Monday club, adding, "The fact may be that some races are superior to others." So what was the context of that? Because you don't give any context at all. And this is the thing with you. If he was saying that some races are superior to others, what's he talking about? Academics? Sport? You know, context is everything, but you haven't given any. So go away. In 2020, top advisor Dominic Cummings hired eugenicist Andrew Sabaski into the government, whose social Darwinist views have been publicly expressed by senior Tory figures before. Right? Right? In 2019, Rees-Mogg was one of several leading Tories to endorse an announcement by Turning Point, McCarthyite, witch hunters and left-wing students of academics. So what they're saying is Turning Point, we're going after the rabid, excuse me, do you know? I'm not going to cut that out, it'll be here all day. Anyway, it said that basically McCarthy witch hunters of left-wing students and academics. Look, there was such a rabid lunacy within the very far left, within academia, right, which has been brainwashing innocent kids, that obviously something needed to be done and it needed to be pointed out. But there you go. That it is intended to stop operations in the UK. Its founding event was attended by the UK editors, I should say, Breitbart and InfoWars. Preparation for state reparation? Is that reparation? It is as well. Okay, dear. Never mind. Shawcross review is intended to help sweep all of this back under the carpet and refocus the Prevent scheme on its intended objectives. Doing so is made more urgent for the ruling class. They hate the ruling class. Mind you, I'm not a great fan of them myself. By the escalation of social and international tensions to a height not seen for decades. An international strike wave and war with Russia. Prevent now dovetails with the state-backed left anti-Semitism campaign driven by the same concerns, outlawing anti-Zionism by branding it anti-Jewish hatred. A sympathy with Palestine will presumably be labelled an extremist Islamist narrative, and as well as an anti-Semitic. Right, so they're saying that basically they're going to promote anti-Semitism. That's where they're going with that. The real guiding principles of both policies were set out in 2019, the year the Prevent Review was ordered. In a report published by the UK Government's Commission on Countering Extremism, which declared large sectors of the left extremist. I agree. In clear preparation for a campaign of state repression. State repression. I wish I got somebody else to read this. Would have been done already. For now, this proceeds indirectly under the cover of prevention and combating anti-Semitism. However, in February last year, the government ordered a review of left-wing extremism, headed by John Woodcote, Baron Wolney, and former Blairite Labour MP who resigned in 2018 protesting a left takeover of the party under Jeremy Corbyn. How much more of this? Right, there's not much more. God. Right. This is closely coordinated state campaign with the left, with the Labour Party, intimately involved in the CCE, is headed by Robin Simcox, who controls the counter-extremism group think tank, which hosted Gove and Shawcross this September. In April 2020, Shawcross was part of a consortium which bought the Jewish Chronicle. I've never heard of the Jewish Chronicle. So anyway, a publication so committed to slandering Corbyn supporters as anti-Semites that it has had to pay significant damages in libel suits. The consortium included Woodcote, along with former Prime Minister Theresa May's Director of Communications, Robbie Gibb was at the Bee Gees, wasn't he? And John Ware. The producer of the Hatchet Job investigation, is Labour anti-Semitic? Well, it's a simple question. Woodcote was rewarded by Boris Johnson for his article on the Labour left with a peerage. Okay. You sure he didn't do anything else dodgy to get that? It seems that these people that get these peers have usually been up to it in all sorts of stuff, so they might have just done a bit more than that. Anyway, it was given a peerage and appointed as his independent advisor on political violence and disruption. His political biography is near identical to that of John Mann, and now leading the left anti-Semitism witch hunt. Okay. So there is no anti-Semitism on the left. Just make that clear, because you say there's not. Just having a quick look through here. We could go on. Dangers of working class of these developments are provided by the events of Germany, where the Socialist Equality Party, I can't even pronounce that, was placed and remains on the watch list of the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. Anyway, look. Named as a left-wing extremist organisation, this was done under the direct direction of Hans Gorb Mann, a man intimately connected to the far-right Alternative for Germany. So, even though my poor reading ability, what we've worked out is that the right are far-right because we say they are, no matter what. We've got 3 accounts there that we're pointing at, but there must be millions of them out there that they're hiding, because it basically that what they're saying is the far right are going to be there to prop up the Tories or to be their strong arms or whatever. Just so you know, if the far right are out there, they won't like the Tories or Conservatives, whatever you want to call them. But they won't like Labour very much either. And to be honest, they'll probably want something extremely... I mean, if there is a far right, they'll probably want something a lot stronger than what's out there at the moment. Just saying. But I don't actually know too many people who know of any far right. I mean, I should imagine they're probably calling people like PA far right. Although I've had no dealings with PA, some people have read their manifesto and are finding it hard to have problems with it. Just saying. What's wrong with being patriotic and want to keep your traditional values? What's wrong in worrying about the demographics of this country? What's wrong with feeling a third-class citizen in your own country? And what's wrong with any of these things? But obviously, they don't fit into which direction that you're pushing this country in or the way you want things. So we all get demonised. Is that where we are right now? I don't know. Anyway, thanks. If you've made it this far, thank you. I found this more harrowing than you probably have. I hate doing this, but unless I can find somebody to read this stuff out, then I'm stuck, and I've got to do it myself. As I say, wsws.org. Okay, you'll find it there, and it's you'll have a read of it yourself. But you've got the gist of it from me anyway. I hope this wasn't too bad. I'm going to do a few more videos. Don't forget, if I've done one video here, I may well have done another one on the Rev on Iran and the other YouTube channel, Simon Evans, all right? The links are always in the description, so bear with. And I hope you're having a good day. I'm going to go and watch a debate shortly between, I believe it's Unwashed, Jada Franson, and James Goddard. So that should be interesting. And I'll see you in a bit.